Let us pray. Guide us, Lord, in all our doings with your gracious favor, and further to your continual help, that in all our works begun, continued, and ended in you, we may glorify your holy name, and finally by your mercy attain everlasting life, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Almighty God, our Heavenly Father, send forth, we beseech thee, upon thy servants who bear office in this country, the spirit of charity and justice, that they may in all things walk before thee with steadfast purpose and a single heart, and faithfully serve in their several offices, through Jesus Christ our Lord. Amen. Most gracious God, author of all good things, we humbly beseech thee for the Parliament of Barbados, especially the Senate at this time assembled, that thou wouldest be pleased to direct and prosper all their counsels to the advancement of thy glory and the good of thy church, and the safety, honor, and welfare of our people. All this we ask in the name of Jesus Christ, our most blessed Lord and Savior. Amen. Together we say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come. Thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive them that trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. And may the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ and the love of God and the fellowship of the Holy Ghost be with us all, now and forever. Amen.
The Senate is in session. Yeah.
Messages from Her Excellency, the Governor General. Announcements by Your Honor, the President.
I have received the minutes of our meeting held on Wednesday, August 18, 2021, for confirmation. Senator Cummings. The question is that the minutes of our meeting held on Wednesday, August 18, 2021 be confirmed. Honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. I think the ayes have it. Minutes are confirmed. I have a message from the Honourable House of Assembly, which reads as follows. The Honourable House of Assembly, message from the Honourable House of Assembly to the Honourable the Senate. The Honourable House of Assembly has the honour to inform the Honourable the Senate that on the 31st day of August 2021, the Honourable House of Assembly committed the following bill, National Vending Bill 2021, to a joint select committee of the two houses, comprising 8 members of the Honourable the House of Assembly and 6 members of the Honourable the Senate, and has approved the following terms of reference for the committee. Terms of reference: 1, to inquire into and determine whether the bill as drafted fulfills the expressed objects of the promotion, regulation, and decriminalization of vending in Barbados. 2, to examine and determine whether the bill as drafted will, upon effective implementation, fulfill the expressed objects of improving the environment for vending, thus contributing to the development of an ethos of transparency, compliance, accountability, and development of the sector. 3, to consider whether the bill as drafted offers an effective enforcement procedure to ensure compliance with the provisions of the bill. 4, to make recommended changes if deemed necessary to the bill as drafted for further consideration by the Chief Parliamentary Council. The House of Assembly has appointed the following members to the Joint Select Committee. The Honourable Carrie D. Simmons, MP, Minister of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. Honourable G.P. Ian Goodenedgell, MP, Minister of Transport, Works and Water Resources. Honourable Adrian Ford, MP, Minister of Environment and National Beautification. Honourable Indar Veer, MP, Minister of Agriculture and Food Security. Honourable Kirk D. M. Humphrey, MP, Minister of Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy. Mr. Trevor A. Prescott, JP, MP. Ms. Tony N.S. Moore, MP. Bishop Joseph J.S. Atherley, JP, MP, Leader of the Opposition. The House of Assembly has the honour to invite the Honourable the Senate to appoint 6 members to the Joint Select Committee, dated the 31st day of August 2021, signed by the Speaker, Arthur Holder, MP. I have, in terms of announcements, indications of lateness from Senators Walcott, McConney, and Grant. Oh yes. you have run faster than your message. I appreciate the swiftness of your feet. That's the end of announcements.
Presentation of petitions, presentation of papers.
Mr. President, I am commanded to lay the following documents: the annual report of the Financial Services Commission for the financial year 2017 to 2018, the annual report also of the FSC for the periods 2018 and 2019, and 2019 and 2020.
Reports from select committees, questions to ministers, requests for leave to move the adjournment of the Senate on matters of urgent public importance, statements by ministers or parliamentary secretaries, personal explanations, motions relating to the business or sitting of the Senate and moved by a minister, introduction of bills, public business, sir.
Public business is now the order of the day.
Order number 1.
Order number 1.
In the name of the Honourable Acting Leader of the Senate, to move the passing of a resolution to approve, in accordance with Section 5 of the Crown Lands Vesting and Disposal Act, Chapter 225, the vesting in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc., a company incorporated under the Companies Act, Cap 308, of a parcel of land, the property of the Crown, comprising the former Her Majesty's Prison Glandary, together with the buildings thereon, situate at Station Hill in the parish of St. Michael in this island, for the purpose of tourism development.
Senator Cummins.
Mr. President, I rise on this occasion to speak on the proposed passage of this resolution before the Honourable the Senate. Mr. President, we are speaking to a 22.9 approximately acre pocket parcel of land situated at Station Hill, St. Michael. Many of us know these 22.9 acres by the colloquial, the familiar, the formal name, Glengarry Prison. Many of us associate it with illegal type activity and the consequences thereof. Many of us are familiar with persons who have passed through this institution. Many of us are familiar with songs that have been sung about this institution and the infamous escapes, and we even have books. A series has now been written on the prison itself and persons who were resident there for a period of time and became infamous, not famous, infamous as a result of their exploits. Now, Mr. President, we are attempting to change the narrative and to have a conversation that builds on that history and the location of that prison to vest this parcel of land, 22.9 acres at Station Hill, in the Barbados Tourism Investment, Inc. But I want to begin, Mr. President, by contextualizing the vesting of the BTI, of this parcel of land in the BTI, not only in the context of tourism development. And while I may stand as the Minister with responsibility for tourism, I perhaps want to make the point that the BTI, aside from tourism investment, has played and continues to play, as recently as today, an active involvement in infrastructure development in this country. Today in the newspaper, Mr. President, publicly available to all, the BTI has issued a request for proposal for the development of a tourism project at Christchurch, at Oystons in Christchurch. And it speaks to 6.6 acres of land currently occupied by the Royal Barbados Police Force, the Randall Phillips Polyclinic, Post Office, Library, Community Development, Welfare Department, Licensing Authority, Barbados Revenue Authority, Magistrates Court, and the bus terminal. Also, in today's newspaper, Mr. President, is another RFP under the BTI, and it is for the redevelopment and adaptive use of the Treasury Building in St. Michael. That is meant to be a combination of residential, commercial, and a mixed-use building. So we see that in the newspaper only today, Mr. President. We are aware that very recently, at a ceremony held in Golden Square, that the former building that occupied those lands were demolished, and we now have a park, which I admittedly have not yet seen, has been beautifully developed there as part of the cultural and the historical significance of who we are as a people. That project, Mr. President, was also undertaken by the BTI. We see the BTI undertaking projects also, Mr. President, in hotel infrastructure in St. Philip and all across the country. This is consistent with an entity that has a primary responsibility for investment transformation projects, infrastructure development projects, and they are best vested in this entity that has, on the basis of that experience, extensive skills and knowledge on how to successfully execute these projects. These are projects, Mr. President, that attract both local and international investment. These are projects that, despite the name of the institution, are not limited to tourism development, but they are driven by the quality and the substance of the submitted requests for proposals. And I want to stress the request for proposals. I have, Mr. President, seen brilliantly written articles by Sir Henry Fraser in the newspaper, for example, on the proposed use of the property for heritage tourism. I've seen only today, Mr. President, a letter to the editor written by someone who authored it called Dick Stout, who speaks about the relevance of wellness and the ability of the property to be used as a wellness facility. While the resolution was being debated in the other place, we heard proposals by the leader of the opposition for different types of uses that could attend to this property, Mr. President. And it is on that basis that the request for proposals now can take advantage of all the various ideas that, when circulated and ventilated by way of a newspaper, only add significant value if, in the first instance, they are considered by those who actually translate ideas into actual submission of a proposal, so that that proposal can be considered substantively on the basis of its merits, and then potentially compared up against all other proposals that are submitted. And I would want to encourage people who read the newspaper, see these invitations as just to be seeing them as just that, an invitation to submit a proposal which you have designed and bring the investment to transform these assets into even more transformative assets than they currently may be. Now, Mr. President, as I was speaking in preparation for this debate today, we were all very amused by the debate in the other place, because everyone had a story of how they were connected to Glenderry Prison. And it was interesting how many people in the parliamentary group on all sides of the aisle had a connection to Glenderry Prison. And so, Mr. President, one, I'm not one who likes bandwagons. I think this is one that I am happy to join today, because I have to say to people that I too grew up as a little girl, spending quite a bit of time in Glenderry Prison as a little girl, because my great aunt was the sole female superintendent of Glenderry Prison. They had the best bakery, they made the best bread, and they had the most outstanding workshop. And I still own furniture. To this day, I think my daughter, who is now 22 years old, our first bed we purchased for her first big girl bed. My 22-year-old daughter, her first big girl bed was bought from Glenderry Prison and their manufacturing workshop, their furniture shop. So I remember going to Christmas concerts and watching the performances. They had the most amazing concerts in their amphitheater. And so it will be a thing of interest to see this facility transformed into something other than what it once was. To see that which was associated with infamy, with illegal activity, with the consequences of that illegal activity, with people who were doing Houdinis, so to speak, that it now has an opportunity to be whether a wellness facility, a mixed-use facility, a cultural facility, a community that encourages entrepreneurship, whatever it is now being designed to be, it has an opportunity to add value to Barbados. But I want to take a moment, Mr. President, to speak specifically about how that transformation and how that new development, however so designed, can add value to our tourism product. Mr. President, if you drive anywhere along the South Coast, if you drive anywhere along the West Coast, you'll see hotel assets all along. Highway 1, Highway 7, hotel assets all along. Hotel infrastructure all along. And Mr. President, I think it is a little known discussion, or perhaps it's something that we have not discussed enough, that the tourism sector is typically associated with these two main corridors. The tourism sector is associated principally with Highway 7 and Highway 1 as hotels. What many people do not see is that the majority of our product, our tourism product, is actually on secondary roads, in smaller communities, rural and urban, and they're very little seen, but we have amazing product. The bulk of it, interestingly enough, in the north and in the central corridors of the country, where communities surround them. Whether it is Harson's Cave, Andromeda Gardens, whether it is the Flower Forest, wherever it is, Mr. President, almost a significant percentage of our tourism product is in our community. And at the level of the Ministry of Tourism, beyond BTI and its focus on infrastructure development, one of the things that we have just completed is a complete audit of all the tourism products in the country. What is the status of each of those products? Where are they located? What is the condition of the surrounding communities around them? What are the opportunities for community tourism development, Mr. President? How can we have an entrepreneurial focus that creates that inclusive environment? I believe Senator Drakes, in a presentation some time ago, spoke about 8% of ownership of the hotel product, Mr. President, 8% local ownership, and the fact that it was owned externally. In the other place, one of the representatives spoke about the need for us to have people having not just a piece of the rock, but a piece of the action, and having an opportunity to own successive generations of entrepreneurial investment and entrepreneurial activity. Mr. President, there has to be, and there is, a focus of this administration on building out tourism development at the level of communities. There is and there has to be a focus of this administration in taking visitors and people with capital, investment capital, into the heart of Barbados, where they are able to benefit from investment opportunities in the first instance, and then create with those opportunities greater opportunities for entrepreneurship. Now, Mr. President, if you think about countries like Jamaica, I love Jamaica, and everybody knows this. Everybody who knows me knows this. But I love Jamaica in Kingston. I don't love Jamaica in Montego Bay or Ocho Rios, and I say that without apology. Why? Because it's too touristy. I love the authenticity of Kingston. I love how local Kingston feels. I love the fact that I am not in a hotel and I'm not limited to the things that people want me to see. I want to be immersed in a community, and I am learning, Mr. President, that I'm not alone. That many visitors, and every single report on tourism has shown that visitors want authenticity. They want authentic experiences. They want to live and experience things like a local. That is what a site like Glenderry can give to a visitor and to an investor who sees and understands that analysis. That is what, whether we have a wellness facility, whatever we use it for, there are people traveling around the world who want to get off the beaten track, who want to leave their hotels on Highway 1 and Highway 7 and go into the country and benefit from the things that we as Barbadians attach significance to. I want to speak also finally, Mr. President, because I don't believe that this is a resolution that I want to spend a significant amount of time on, but of course, as there are questions raised by my colleagues, I will have an opportunity to respond to them over time, and I'm happy to do so. But I want to make the point also, Mr. President, that development must not only take place in our major corridors. It must not only take place in our cities. It must also take place in our urban and in our rural areas. People have to have an opportunity to feel as though they have a stake in the game. Now, when I say people need to feel as though they have a stake in the game, everybody is not going to have the kind of capital that it will take to develop 22.9 acres. I don't have that kind of capital, but somebody might. I don't have to be the owner of that. But my investment, if done on a fractional basis, if done on an inclusive basis, and there's a democratization of access, that investment can create an opportunity for persons who may not have that level of capitalization. That may create an opportunity for a creative and a cultural entrepreneur. It may create an opportunity for a person who is frying fish and wouldn't know where to begin to invest in a 22.9 acre property. It also has to create employment opportunities for the people in the community around it. This is an urban, relatively densely populated area. People must matter. And in an environment where so many people are fighting to get back to their jobs, fighting to retain jobs, fighting to find jobs in an environment that is globally challenging as a result of the COVID-19 pandemic, and the number of companies and businesses that have either closed or have not reopened fully, there are opportunities that must be created, new opportunities for people that must be created through new investment projects like this. New opportunities for employment, new opportunities for vending, new opportunities for selling your products through whatever retail and distribution networks you may create, because there's something authentic about this. This is an opportunity, Mr. President, for Barbadians to see this and all the other projects that are being advertised by the BTI as a stake in the game that they are being offered, that they have an opportunity to buy into. You know what I would love to see, Mr. President? I would love to see a local consortium of both investors and entrepreneurs come together with capital and ideas and submit an RFP. Shouting from the mountaintop, Mr. President, about a stake on its own is insufficient. Writing in a newspaper on its own is interesting, it adds value to the conversation, but it doesn't actually give you a stake in the game. Let us see how we can look at these things in the newspaper, Mr. President, and actually engage in a meaningful way. Who are the people that we know or don't know who may find this interesting? Who have we shared it with? How do we bring ideas and capital together to the table to submit something of value to an RFP of this nature? And that, Mr. President, is what this is about. This is what the other two RFPs in the newspaper today are about under the BTI. And it is on that basis, Mr. President, that I wish to commend this resolution to this honorable chamber. And I beg to move that this resolution do now pass.
Thank you, Senator Cummins. Senator Franklin.
Good morning, and thank you very much, Mr. President. I shan't be long because I was looking for more information from the minister on what they propose to do with Glenderry Prison. I didn't hear it because my own position is that the place should have been razed to the ground and build something of significance to use and not celebrate what used to be there. What was there was an old colonial era prison where our people, mostly black young men, were incarcerated for whatever crimes they committed. I'm not saying they shouldn't have been incarcerated, but I'm saying that they shouldn't have been incarcerated in those conditions that we have come to know and on the stories that we've been told about that prison. I will cite a few examples to show you why that prison was built to house about 400 people, 300 somebody people. And in its heyday, it was housing over 1,000. Where people who should be in cells, one man to a cell, end up sometimes 3 and 4. And when you put young men who were deprived of female companionship in those positions, those other fellows that said they start looking real pretty. And so the prison was known for that. Maybe we can celebrate that. We want to preserve that. I don't think so. This prison, up to when it was burnt in I can't remember, something like the 90s. This prison was men you do the ablutions at night in bucket and walk across the yard and dump it in a well or over the wall or whatever they did with it. And that's what we want to celebrate and what we want to preserve. These are things that we should be ashamed of and apologize, and people should be apologizing to the prisoners who had to go through that, because let me tell you something, they were prisoners and they committed crime and all kind of stuff, but they were human beings too. And having gone through that process, we have some well-intentioned, I can't say idiots, because it would be offensive, but I won't be offensive today, well-intentioned people who think that we must preserve everything colonial, and anytime you put 2 blocks together on top of one another, and it happened before independence, we got to celebrate it, and we got to call it a national treasure, and we got to do all kinds of things with it. Glendale Prison was not a national treasure, it was a national embarrassment. Our people, whether you like it or not, whether they committed crimes or not, should not have been treated in the way they were. That's why it was burnt. No, because nobody listened to the cries of those people, and they had to get rid of it. So they found the only way that they could have got rid of it was to burn it. Because it was a place of torture. It was and I'm not talking about actual physical torture, where people had to exist in those conditions. And we now want to celebrate that. And we're going to build it, raise it to the ground. When you finish with that project, something should emerge like a phoenix of the ashes that has no connection to Glendale Prison. Or that nobody would know that the prison was there if you come into Barbados and go to wherever that is, or whatever turns up, that would have been a prison there. It is not something to celebrate. I don't know why we feel that we have to pander to this nonsense from people who think that they're going to preserve everything. There's certain things that ain't worth preserving. What we're going to do up there, so when people got hanged, there was a burial ground there for them. They're going to do is you're going to put up a monument to that too, and say, well, this is where the convicts were, you bury them. If you committed a crime, we were always very judgmental, and we judge people. So if they bury your head down and you're supposed to, they said Christ will rise in the east, and so when he rises and you wake up from to see him, you'll be facing the east, so your head was always to the west. They put your head to the east and your backside down, backside up, so you wouldn't see him. And that's what we can celebrate. That is nonsense, sir. I really feel that somebody should think these things through. This is not something that we should want to preserve. not in independent Republic of Barbados. Come November 30th, this is not something that we should be pushing and saying that we are celebrating this. This is what our people had to endure at the hands of the colonials. And then when we took over, we didn't make it any better. Because, you know, prisoners were supposed to be treated badly, and they were. You talk to prisoners. I talked to a lot of them. As a matter of fact, I was talking to prisoners up to when they had the last lockdown. And one of the fellas I was talking to, when the fellow he was talking to me and gave me information to BT and lock up in segregation, you know. And I had to call the minister to get it out. So, because they don't want the kind of atrocities, because those same atrocities with the same type of people that you had at Glendale have been transferred to the other place. And they carry that same type of bad behaviors. And they do whatever they like. And we have created monsters from Glendale, and now we have taken them to Dodge Prison. I hear people call it Her Majesty's Prison, Dodge. I never knew when Her Majesty had given them permission to use her name on that prison, but people have been calling it Her Majesty's Prison, Dodge. I don't know why. So, and we're going to have the same problems at the new place if you're not careful. Mind you, we have toilets this time, but other than that, you still have the same mentality running the prisons. And you're still treating prisoners badly. You're still treating officers badly. Of course, they're your friends. And look, just recently, a prisoner who tried to escape got shot. He tried to escape from a female officer. She was accompanying him. He was accused of murdering 2 people, his mother and some other person. And you have a female prison officer trying to restrain him without handcuffs. Call around the handcuffs up there too. Take some of that money that you're going to invest in and buy some handcuffs, some mechanical restraint. That episode, prison officers, we have a situation where there are more, there are 29 female prisoners in Dawes Prison, and you got more than 100 female prison officers. Reason being, they're cute. That's all. And you have instances where prison officers are being treated very badly. I'm going to touch a bit on prison officers and what's happening with them now.
Senator Franklin, I would invite you on sober reflection to withdraw that remark.
Which remark, sir?
That the 100 female officers, because they're cute. You and I know that the women of this country are able to achieve their professional ambitions, whether they're cute or not. And I would not. I know that you. Sir, would not,
I will withdraw it,
I know that you would not want that to go down the record.
So I would want it to go down the record, but if you want me to withdraw, I will. For sake of getting ahead, I don't want to argue with the chair. But I'm saying to you, sir, we have female prison officers in Barbados who have never done a day's prison work. They have never dealt with the prisoner. They have never. Matter of fact, they never worked nights. But not doing prison work. And they create all kinds of fancy positions for them up there. They don't do anything. Right now we have a prison officer at home on sick leave. She's ill. And they say she's working remotely from home. You're supposed to be supervising prisoners. She ain't got 100 prisoners, you know. She ain't got 100 prisoners with her. Not. And this is what's happening. That's the kind of examples I was giving. Mind you, when there's a male officer who is sick, they send before medical board to get him out the system so they can get another female person in. And right now they have about 4 or 5 of them before medical boards who are ill, males, and the females they're told that they're supervising prisoners from home. They're working overtime. I'll just touch a little thing here, because I saw the minister mention recently about what is happening with the overtime for prisoners. I had a meeting with the then minister.
So I think you mean overtime for prison officers, not prisoners.
Now, you have prisons who spend overtime out there too because fellas lost the brackets and people got locked up for too long. So, everybody getting overtime out there. But, sir, when we raised the fact that prison officers were, this was under the old minister, the last one, money was provided in the estimate to pay what they're called flexi. Police, fire, prisons. I remember when Sir David Simmons was minister, I worked for him. He introduced a system where officers would be paid for overtime, and it was put in the estimate. Prisons got that overtime money and never paid it to men. And I had a meeting with the minister, because I'm a consultant to the Prison Officers Association, industrial relations consultant, sir. So we were querying why the men weren't paid. The permanent secretary who was at that meeting, when she realized that was happening, she said, "What? That is wrong. You can't do that. That money was voted for the overtime, and the body can't change it." The people at the prison explained, oh, the money was taken to use for something else. And she said, we were going to have an investigation. 2 days later, she got transferred. And what was really troubling is that she has 6 months more to go in the public service in Barbados. You don't transfer a permanent secretary to go to learn a new ministry, and then she retired immediately after. But I had to get her up because she didn't want this investigation. Now we're having ministers talking about investigations again. Every time something happened, or there will be an investigation. When they call him and complain, the new minister now, when they call him and complain about the informant that I had being beaten, he said, we're going to have an investigation. Nothing happens to these investigations. So I think they're just to pacify people into feeling that something is going to happen. Money was voted. Money was misappropriated because it was not, when I say misappropriated, it's appropriated in the estimates and it was spent, but not spent for the purpose. So,
Senator Franklin,
so when I say misappropriated, I mean exactly that.
You and I know that was in an English class that may pass muster in relation to this chamber and the functioning of government misappropriated in its ordinary meaning will be taken as somebody carry away the money. That's what I'm saying, sir. But you're also saying that was spent on something that says I would urge caution.
No, but that's what they say at the meeting.
But you cannot merely be a transmitter of information that you cannot vouch. You will not go down that road without being able to have adequate proof. That is I don't want to use the term slanderous, but it could cast aspersions on public officers who are not here to defend themselves at this time.
I recognize that, and I'm only sorry that I don't have the copy of the minutes of that meeting to show that what I'm saying is absolutely true. When the permanent secretary asked what happened to this money, he said it was spent on something else. Which
I heard you the first time, and I have no problem with that. I'm saying to you, Senator Franklin, that no, sir, you will not use that word misappropriate in that context. You will withdraw that, and we will move on.
Sir, I will withdraw because you say so, and I'm an obedient senator. But sir, that's the definition of misappropriation. But if you say so, sir, I will go on. Right? So right now, sir, what we need is an investigation into what is happening in prison, a complete investigation. An investigation, more of a judicial inquiry into the operations of the prison, or we're going to have another Glendaria, because it's, right now, it is rife for insurrection. All kinds of things that happen up there. You have, for instance, you have prison officers working 12 hours. And I'm seeing in the newspaper where the superintendent said, oh, let's sign for it. You can't sign for it. The only person who can adjust the hours in the public service is the minister responsible for the public service. So if a prison officer and the superintendent get together and say, oh, They have no authority to do that. They would have been stepping out. They'll be down the wicket with the bat in the air. They can't do it. It is not something that they have the authority to do. And then when you've got men working for 12 hours a day, ain't paying them. And then, when you work 12 hours a day, you got to go home late, Because I remember recently I represented a fellow at another place, not in prison this time, and he was working, and he left his post and he went to the shop drinking, When they found him, they said, "What happened to you?" Me too, I represent this fellow, and they said, "You were such a good officer. How this could happen? We used to put you to work as a supervisor when this work was off, and this is how you repair us?" And I heard all these testimonies from other people saying what a good fellow he was. And I turned and said to him, "Yeah, you get home?" And his next response was, the reserve officer said, a director said, "Mr. Franklin, you can go. We can sort this out. He ain't the first fella, or he ain't gonna be the last." He was not at home, and somebody was coming in when he wasn't there. And that caused him almost a very serious issue in Barbados. The problem is, you got to let people go home. When you had the lockdown and you locked people in prison, that was one thing. But now you have people working 12 hours. When you work 12 hours, you got to catch 2 buses to get home. By the time you work 12 hours, you got to go home, shake at your children and wife, and tell them goodbye, go on and sleep, get back up, them and go on, you go on. So this is not right. So they're going to fix this. Now, sir, I want to touch on something about spending the money. And if you are going to refurbish this prison and make it look someplace for people, like a museum type thing, because I don't know what is going to happen. I don't understand what the government is doing with Dodge prison. I mean, Glendale prison. But if you're going to spend money on that, we can come again. You need to spend money on things that matter. Because a few weeks ago when it was raining, a friend of mine was in the accident emergency with his brother, and he sent me a video with water coming through the roof. Spend money on that. And I'm talking about the old accident emergency, I'm talking about new one. A person very near and dear to me was supposed to be operated on yesterday at the QH. But he couldn't operate on him because his surgery is leaking. And fungus and mold build up, so he couldn't operate in there. Spend money on that. Don't spend money on foolishness.
Mr. President?
I want the right Senator
I
Cummins.
rise on a point of order.
Yes.
Mr. President, the honourable member is misleading the House. By definition, this is a request for proposals. It is an investment proposal. The government has no investment stake in the project. It is being leased, and that has been clearly indicated. So to make the statement, Mr. President, that government is spending money on an investment project is by definition logically incorrect, and it is misleading to the House, Mr. President.
Thank you, Senator Cummins. Senator Franklin.
Mr. President, I said I don't know what government is doing. Because there's nothing here. The Minister of Government, she said nothing. She talked pretty about how she used to be in prison and all of that, but she never told us what the government used to do or going to do with money. I didn't know. They're coming to us and with a blank slate and asking us to approve this for the BTTI to do something. I want to know. I asked him the question. I never said the government spend a cent. I said, but if you're going to spend it on these things, that's what I'm talking about. I don't know. I think she likes to interrupt me.
No, she was just giving the assurance that there is no proposal for the government to spend money on the former Glendale prisons.
Say that in her substantive proposal, a presentation when she gets up, instead of jumping in like a Spanish station and interrupting the process, because I'm getting tired of it. Yeah. No, I don't get flustered. I'm just saying to you, sir, that sometimes you can sit down and listen and then reply. You got the right to reply. And you're not going to take me off of what I want to say. I'm saying to you that you have other issues where we can spend money. And if you were going to spend money on these things, let us know. And if you want to spend money, you say it's a proposal for investment. How you going to know that? You said here, a resolution to for purpose of tourism investment, of tourism development. And then you said, look, the schedule. You said nothing more, nothing else came before the house. I got today and I got this document, this folder that they gave me for the leader opposition business in the Senate. All it had was this, nothing more. So when the government come with these things without putting any fat on the bones, you left me to wonder, and they're going to ask questions. Sir, please ask the Senator to stop interrupting me. You know, I understand this unrequited love thing with her and me, but it has to stop. You know, it's you know how it is. You know, I'm taken. Well, she doesn't have to continue doing that for this all the time. You know, unrequited love could be a terrible thing. You know, and so, but you know, she just I don't pray no. I don't want her to pray. I just tell her that, you know, I'm gone. You know, so Mike, let me get back to what I was talking about. I don't know what the government is doing with the prison. They haven't said. I have seen persons in Barbados whose names I am not allowed to call here, writing and speaking about things that they should do with Dodge prison, and Glendale prison, and then I see government doing something about it. I put 2 and 2 together. I might come with 6. I might come with 4. I don't know yet. But the government has not brought us into its confidence to tell us what they're going to do. That is why I am speculating, and then about what should happen, what is happening, or what should happen, and that's why I'm complaining that why would we want to use this facility to perpetuate the memory of what Glendale prison was. It's not something that you want to think. Pull it that check down. When that thing comes down, you should not find one single stone to remind you that that was a prison there and where all people were treated in the manner that they were. Yes, sir, it was a prison. People were hanged. People got beaten with a cat and nine tails, and all kinds of things. But it was inhuman. It was degrading. See, a fellow might be a prisoner and he might have committed crimes and stuff, but he's a human being. And I'm saying that we should not be celebrating that now. And all I'm saying to you is, and I'm asking because the government is telling us, you see, Barbados must be put in a position where the government proposes to do something for us. Tell us what it is. We are not babies. You know, we know, we are, most of us are intelligent enough to understand. So when you tell me that something is going to happen, we can, but just don't come and spring on us, because this is what you're doing to us. We're spraying on us. Yes, something needs to be done with Glendale prison. Something needs to be done with Dodge prison too, because they didn't finish yet. You know that. Up now they got walls that didn't painted, and the front floors in tile, and people getting sick. But that doesn't matter matter. But something needs to be done with that property. And all they want to know is what government proposes to do. Don't tell me that you have a proposal for an investment. BTIA comes in and they start building all kinds of things and do all kinds of fancy things, and they do good work. I have no quarrel with the work done in the past by BTIA, whichever it is. But I don't want to find out what they're doing, because there might be somebody else who have something even more beneficial to Barbados. Like the last time we were here, we talked about vesting land, transferring it to Babisco. You know, I'm sure that didn't go through the same process where people were given. So, but look, government can sell this land. You want it? Come with some idea. No, I'm saying to you, just one person don't come up with a position, and government runs with it. Because I can assure you, see, I used to be a member of Public Workers Credit Union Board. And that board, after I left, they bought the property in Bridgetown for $6.5 million. a little squeeze up place that water was rising to the roof and nobody would buy it. 6.5 million. And we spent you can get 6.5 million for all the acres up there. The buildings. So them to put it out there for people to see. Let our buildings have their say, not after the fact, because when you go and sign on the dotted line, I think we could talk as much as we like. That's why people were upset with this Republic thing, because we were told we were going to be a Republic on the 30th, and then we can tell you what we're going to do later. And people vex. This is the same thing we're doing now with the prison. You're going to tell people we're going to develop the prison, we're going to get investors, we're going to do all kind of stuff, and they won't tell us what we are getting, what we are getting involved in. Government can't, you see, this is barbarous for all of us. And we need to know we did not elect a government to lord over us, we get to govern. You know, when you go on the polls, when the polls coming up and you go on campaigning, you tell people, I am your servant. And then when you become the government, you become the master and overlord. And you're going out there doing things. I just don't want to see a situation where Glendale Prison is held up by a few well-intentioned people who want to preserve history and not relating to history. It was built all those years ago, I don't know when, and it has some design that people like and that kind of stuff. Oh yes, that's nice architectural history. But the other history that went on inside there is not something to be celebrated. And I'm saying to you that if you're going to use that property, don't let you prepare for COVID. Sanitize the place. Make sure you haven't got the trace of that on you, and then get rid of it and move elsewhere. We do not need a reminder of. It's just like you like have a situation where people have suffered, and yet the Jews are still talk about the gas chambers and stuff. This is not the same type, but it is, and they refer to it, but they don't refer to it with reverence. They don't refer to the old holy gas chambers. You know, but we want to go and make this thing something that we be proud of. You can't be proud of this unless you were the master race and you were treating the people so. Mr. Chairman, I hope the government have a rethink on this whole process. And thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, Senator Franklin. Senator Grant.
Thank you, Mr. President. I thought, as Minister would have communicated, that the debate on this resolution will be one which would be relatively simple and straightforward. Having listened, though, to the contribution of Senator Franklin, I am a bit concerned. I must confess that, sir. I can't tell you that I am a bit surprised, because I must say that the comments made by Senator Franklin are never very surprising to me. I believe that as a people, we have to embrace and to understand our history. I am not one of those individuals who believes that those aspects of our history, even where some elements may be uncomfortable, that we should seek to erase those. I think it is important that we understand our history and to build on that history. I believe, sir, it was the Jamaican political activist Marcus Garvey who said that a people without knowledge of their past, origin, and culture is like a tree without roots. And I start there, sir, because I fundamentally disagree with what has been put forward by Senator Franklin, that you should remove Glengarry Prison. And because prisons of yesteryear, and these are my words, were places of punishment as opposed to being places of rehabilitation and the treatment of the human rights of prisoners, that we should just get rid of Glengarry Prison and forget all that would have transpired. Sir, as I listened, I reflected too on the fact of the church, that I belong to a church, sir, that I know that you are very familiar with, Christ Church, Parish Church. And I shouldn't hear it say, sir, but I hear somebody asking if I used to go to church. Not only go to church, sing in the choir at one stage, and also was in the service. So I'm a young Christian boy and now a adult Christian man. But I'm sure Senator Rogers would agree with me if I say that we all have sinned and fallen short of the glory of God. I'm in the others. But in Christ Church, Parish Church, I still believe in the pews. I still believe, sir, in the pews that you have a little, there was a little rectangular, slightly metal something there which would have, I'm told, the names of certain people who would have gotten priority in the church. Am I to forget about that or erase that? No, sir. It's part of the history. Sir, there was a slave owner by the name of John Newton, I believe, that reference would have been made to him before. How sweet the name of Jesus sounds. That's his song. Of course, we all know Amazing Grace. Yes. And the point that I'm making, sir, is that we must not, simply because some aspect of history is uncomfortable, erase the history, but we have to embrace it, and we have to determine how we can utilize that history for our betterment. The other thing is this, sir, because I heard reference made to if government is going to use any money or any money being used at Glengarry should be put in other places. And a phrase came to mind, a one-trick pony. And normally when we speak in the context of a one-trick pony, we are speaking to the fact that it's not only in one area that you excel. And what happens, sir, with respect to our country, this economy, is that we have to look at different areas in seeking to facilitate having resources to properly deal with the administration of the country. So you can't simply just focus in one area and forget others. You have to have a more holistic approach. So when I think of Glengarry Prison, I remember other prisons as well. And Minister is correct. There were a number of people at Glengarry infamous. I remember, sir, as I believe I would have been a teenager at the time. There was a movie starring Clint Eastwood called Escape from Alcatraz. I believe Alcatraz is in California, San Francisco. And we all know that Alcatraz is a tourism attraction. Sir, we know that the late President of the African National Congress and President of South Africa, Nelson Mandela, was on Robben Island in prison. And we know that they are now utilizing Robben Island with respect to tourism activities. And I'm saying, sir, that we in Barbados have our own stories to tell, and we have our own history, and we have to determine how we will utilize those to the benefit of our people. I remember, sir, the Calypso. Can't find me, brother, at all. In fact, sir, many of us will recall that on the second occasion that Winston Hall was caught, the superintendent of prisons at the time said the only way he could escape from Glenderry would be if he was Houdini. I guess, sir, Houdini he was, because he did escape. I remember, sir, growing up, hearing about people like Simeon Buddy Brathwaite. Of course, you don't glorify these things, but it is a reality. And what I'm saying, sir, is that I see nothing wrong with government vesting this prison in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. and facilitating requests for proposals in order for persons to make submissions to determine what use Glenderry prison could be put to for the benefit of the people of Barbados. Right now, I ask this question: what is happening with Glenderry? As far as I'm aware, sir, at this stage, absolutely nothing. I believe there's still some cars in that compound. But there's really nothing of any real value taking place there. And I think, sir, that it is important that we embrace this resolution and that we have the RFP going out by the BTII. One of the things I would like to see, certainly, sir, with any project at Glenderry, is an integration of the community and the ability for vendors and small business operators to also have the opportunity to participate. I believe, sir, that it is important that as we create the framework for development, we ensure that that development is done in a manner that all segments of the society are allowed to participate. I think, sir, it's appropriate that the vesting is being done in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. That entity, sir, is very familiar with RFPs. That is an entity, and I believe, sir, if you were to go on the website of the BTII, the mandate is to develop a portfolio of tourism-related properties in joint venture with the private and public partners, to manage and implement the urban rehabilitation program for Bridgetown, Speightstown, St. Lawrence Gap, Oistins, and to facilitate both public and private sector-owned investment in tourism and hospitality sector in Barbados. And we know the history of the work done by the BTII, whether that relates to work done with respect to the Constitution River Phase 1 and Phase 2. I believe they're looking at Phase 3 now. Whether it relates to Jubilee Gardens There was work done, the salt pond drainage, I believe, sir, in Spikestown. But you also had other projects that they were involved with. Arlington House Museum in Queen Street in Spikestown. I believe that there would have been also a collaboration with George Washington House, which is facilitated by the Bush Hill Tourism Trust. So I believe that the BTII is the appropriate entity to be able to carry this RFP forward, and for there to be that collaboration and for them to manage that project. And as Minister would have pointed out, there are a number of RFPs, as she indicated, Oistins and the Treasury Building, and of course the BTI is also involved with respect to Sam Lord's Castle. We need more attractions in Barbados. We need to be able to give our visitors and locals more options as it relates to attractions. Everyone knows that this is an extremely challenging and competitive time. And as we engage in more fierce global competition, we have to ensure that we are able to enhance the visitor experience. Mr. President, you will hear me continually speak to the issue of visitor experience. And the reality is, having more attractions allows us that opportunity for visitors and locals to have the opportunity to participate in such events. And as I said, sir, I think it's important to have an integration of business persons, craft operators, vendors, and taxi operators, and the like. I do, however, sir, in speaking to the issue of this resolution, also say that we do have to pay attention to the issue of serious crime. We do have to pay attention to the issue of harassment. And continually we do get reports of harassment, particularly in the St. Lawrence Gap area and in 2nd Street. And we get reports about the peddling of drugs. And there has been collaboration with the Royal Barbados Police Force. There have been special patrols and actions that have been undertaken. But we have to continue to pay attention to those areas, because crime can have a negative impact on the development of our tourism industry. I also have to say, sir, that the focus at Glengarry Prison, it is my understanding, Mr. President, has changed. There are a number of programs that are instituted. And let me say this. You know, as I was thinking about this resolution, I remembered some persons that I know. There was one exactly the same age as me. I believe he died earlier this year. His name, sir, if I could call it, his name, sir, was Denzel Roberts. He was part of that, the 4 persons with the issue with Winston Hall and the plantation owner, Francia Plantation, I believe. Sir, we were essentially from the same community in Titchburn. Went, sir, to the same primary school, St. Giles Boys School. Sat, sir, in the same class. But the reality was, and is, sir, that our circumstances were a lot different, and the opportunities available were a lot different. And, sir, I'm told that if you look at the prison population, 70% of persons in prison do not have acceptable secondary education at all. And I think, sir, that we do have to ensure that while we speak to issues of incarceration, that we also make sure that there are proper programs for assisting prisoners. I think, sir, that there has been a major shift in the ideology of the operation of prisons. As I said before, prisons initially were thought of as places of hard labor. They are now, sir, focused more on the rehabilitation of offenders. And I am told that that is the route that those at Dodds are going with, an increase in the number of rehabilitated staff that are being employed at Dodds Prison. And so I'm told the prison has adopted a reintegration strategy for the service, and they've utilized the support of an entity out of Canada. So a strong focus on rehabilitation, that is important. Not only things in relation to car repairs or vocational classes. Minister spoke to the fact that, you know, there was a time when you got good bread from Glenderry Prison. In fact, I believe the sweetest bread. The sweetest bread. Sorry, sir, but I could taste it. No, I had some, sir. And the sweetest bread came from Glenderry Prison. But not only in relation to matters such as that, but also allowing persons to be exposed to the more traditional elements of education, I think is important. And the Ministry of Education is partnering with Dodds Prison in facilitating education for offenders. So, sorry, I wouldn't want it to appear that the prison is only just focused on one aspect, but I think we have to recognize the historical context, and that is that we've moved away from the stocks and the pillories and the treadmill type of treatment and punishment to one of rehabilitation and the recognizing of the human rights of prisoners. Mr. President, I believe that this resolution is an important resolution. It does allow us, sir, to take a facility that is now not being utilized in any way and to have, through the BTII, request for proposals. And I'm encouraging, as I said, any entities that are looking to participate to ensure that there's involvement of the local community. And I believe, sir, that such a resolution could be the first stage in what could become a significant tourism attraction to the benefit not only of visitors, but of locals and to all Barbadians in general. And sir, with those few words, I give my full support to this resolution.
Thank you very much, Senator Grant. Senator Mr. Minard.
Thank you, Mr. President. I do not intend to be as brief as my colleagues. Mr. President, the vesting of this portion of Crown lands in the Barbados Tourism Investment Inc. speaks to government's hope and plan that this country will return to some level of normalcy in the future. But in this pandemic, Mr. President, we will only have a future if we can make it through the pandemic. On the Glenderry prison itself, Mr. President, it was a place of punishment. It was a place where our people who were sent there suffered, and some never walked out. And sad to say, some were never carried out because they were executed and buried there. I too, Mr. President, am connected to Glenderry. A lot of my Miller relatives from one side of my family were part of that penal institution, and some still are in different Caribbean islands because that has become part of us. Some have moved on and have become part of the legal fraternity and have risen to various levels in that area. Glenderry wasn't just a place, Mr. President, of punishment, but as has been said, unbelievable bits of furniture came from Glenderry. It was the place where our Barbados mahogany was truly utilized, and other woods. But Mr. President, I watched from the third floor of the QEH, I think it was on a Tuesday, as the black smoke billowed from Glenderry. And I watched it with mixed feelings because my relatives often spoke of the pain that they felt from the suffering that went on in Glenderry. And I have not warmed up to the idea that we will want to retain it as a building where the vast majority of our people who went there suffered. They went there for one reason, for punishment. And I don't ever believe that places of punishment should be glorified, especially places where we carry executions, where people's lives are taken, whether, especially if you've determined that they were guilty, whether they were innocent or not is a matter to be determined, and only one force can determine that. So I must agree with my colleague, Senator Franklin, that I would feel tremendous relief if I drove down Station Hill and I saw a clear space. You can't erase the past, but there's some things about it that you should not keep. That is my view. Mr. President, the matter of further vesting of Crown lands for development, and I'm going to preempt something that was said about oystins. I believe that when it's done, Mr. President, there must be some thought given to real preservation of the things that matter. I happened to have been at Oystins last weekend, and I took the opportunity to go and see an area that I was unaware of. And I grew up in Christchurch and I went to school at Foundation, and I spent many evenings in Oystins. I watched a program on television where I think it was a gentleman called Mr. McCaskey was doing a program on Oystins, and he revealed that there was an old fort behind what used to be District Hospital. And I felt that's not possible. So on Saturday evening, I went down to that spot, and lo and behold, there are remnants of a fort. And I counted 6 cannon in the water. And I went back home and I found a book that I had bought. I do not want to call the wrong name, but it was a senior officer from the BDF had done a book, and he had recorded the locations, the sites where the various cannons were. I think it's Major Hartland. And that site is listed. And I would like to think that if or when there is further development considered there and it happens, we should seek to preserve that aspect of the past and not just bring in the bulldozers as we're so prone to do and knock down and flatten everything. Mr. President, if we are going to get to the future, however, we have to deal with the present. And I beg your indulgence, Mr. President, because we are making all these plans and government is making every effort to get things started for the future. But unless we get through this pandemic, Mr. President, our future is not going to be rosy. And I want to appeal, Mr. President, to all that along with the mask wearing and the sanitizing that we have to do, not only for ourselves but for others, what is necessary. And it appears that the only thing that we have left, apart from prayer, I'm told, that seems to work for the prevention of COVID-19 is vaccination. And I don't know if enough adults and children of the right age have really sat down and thought of what it means, because it's one of the few things that you can really do quietly and help many other people. Mr. President, we watch every day as the numbers rise and fall and seesaw. And we see what has happened in other countries next door, because across the water we see it's happening. And I can't help but wonder what will happen if it happens here. And we are fortunate in that we have at our fingertips the material that is needed to prevent further spread. And I beg that our people will seriously consider taking it. Mr. President, if we unfortunately get caught, all the plans we are making here today will come to naught. And I hope that those who listen, Mr. President, will take action. And it's easy to be a naysayer, very easy. And you have to ask yourself whether the people who are the naysayers, what proof do they have that what they're saying is true? Then you ask yourself, what is the proof given that what is being offered to you works? And the evidence is clear. If you just look at the numbers listed from Harrison of the COVID timetable, or dashboard, you will see that among the unvaccinated, there are far, far greater numbers. So it appears at this point in time, the thing that you could have in your back pocket is a vaccine. Mr. President, I thank you and I'm obliged to you.
Thank you very much, Senator Mr. Maynard. Senator Greenwich.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, I rise to give support to the resolution. As you would know, sir, this matter was debated in the other place about 2 weeks or so ago. And approximately 2 days after that debate, I remember reading in the newspaper what some of the readers had said to the media. I was surprised, sir, that about half a dozen of those who were interviewed said almost the same thing, which I heard from Senator Franklin and Senator Maynard this morning. When asked what they think should happen to the site at Glenderry, they said, demolish it, knock it down, replace it with something else. And I have to say up front, sir, I do not agree with that position. I do not agree with Senator Franklin and Senator Maynard's thesis that Glenderry should be razed to the ground. I support much of what Senator Grant has said this morning. Indeed, sir, after reading what those interviewed had said in the newspaper, I read a very interesting article by Sir Henry Fraser. Indeed, sir, I think that should be compulsory reading for the two senators who spoke and took the other view. Because Sir Henry Fraser, he suggested that there should be something preserved which related to the prison. And I share that view, Mr. President. So I think it is a good idea for us in Barbados to bring this place to life again. I agree with having a tourism project there. The point is, sir, that whatever we do, it must be something to hold the attention of the tourists and the locals alike. Whatever, sir, the property is eventually, what is eventually used for, we should preserve some of what that Glenderry was as a prison. We must preserve part of our history. And I want to say to Senator Franklin and to Senator Maynard, through you, sir, we are not celebrating it. We are not celebrating it. To preserve part of our heritage is not celebrating what went on. And I think that that is where some of us are being misled. Sir, I know the area. I've gone there. I've actually interviewed prisoners there, prisoners who are on death row and so on. And I can tell you, sir, that there may be no need for the entire grounds to be used for mere prison heritage. If I remember correctly, sir, that property consists of about 3 massive buildings. One building, I am suggesting, sir, can be used for those exhibits relating to the prison. The other 2 buildings can be used for other aspects of our heritage that is outside of prison life, or for whatever project the BTII is thinking about. We can use just one building for prison life relics and so on, and the other 2 for something else. But the key thing in all of this is that we should utilize the space at Glenderry properly and efficiently. May I remind Senator Franklin and Senator Maynard too, sir, that there are certain parts in Africa, we can call it the motherland, the homeland, where we came from. Certain parts of Africa that still have as attractions the holding cells, where the slaves, our foreparents, were kept in preparation for that Middle Passage trip. They're still there to this day. And they're not celebrating those cells. They're not celebrating them. They are part and parcel of history. That is what they are. And we come in here, oh, we're celebrating this thing, and said, that is not what they are. These people, sir, are not ashamed of those cells. They see them as part of history. There are other places too, sir, where the dungeons, the cells, are there because they are part of history. So unlike Senator Franklin and Senator Maynard, we have to know where exactly we have to draw the line, and we cannot erase everything concerning our past. Some of it might be rough, yes, but we cannot erase everything concerning our heritage. So heritage tourism is a big thing. And we should not deny our heritage simply because it reminds us of the rough road that we've had to walk, that we've had to travel in the past. There was life before independence, sir, and our foreparents lived it and we lived it. There was life before independence. There was life before republic, and we lived it. And we cannot continue to erase our history as though we were never a colony. We can't do it, sir. I have heard calls for them to change the name, for instance, of Princess Margaret School, the place that I taught when Princess Margaret came and opened the school. You know, that is part, we were a colony, that is part of our history. People are calling for us to erase everything. Everything. I know, sir, that we have in this country a group of Barbadians who believe that if part of our history is not pleasant in their opinion, then it should be eradicated and destroyed altogether. I know that group. I know that group, and I know it well, sir. So Nelson should be thrown into the wharf, and Nelson's statue should be destroyed, break up altogether. Sir, I can understand the point and the fact that Nelson should be nowhere near to Heroes Square. But when it comes to things like destroying the statue, you know, Nelson happened. Nelson's statue happened. Why should we destroy what was part of its colonial history? And it should be there. Sir, South Africa, the home of apartheid, will never destroy that cell which Senator Grant spoke about earlier, the one that housed Nelson Mandela. Yes, sir, there were times when history was not kind to us, but we should never be untruthful or unkind to history. We should not be, sir. Mr. President, this country is small. And even though it's small, I know of countries, at least two places smaller, and they have larger museums than we have. I think, sir, that our museum here has done a superb job up to now. I don't think it has a lot of space left. Although, to be quite frank, sir, I think that there is sufficient land space there and sufficient buildings and so on around the museum that we can use if we have to. But yes, I believe that some of the things which we have at the museum now can be transferred, can be used at any project such as the one we're thinking about at Glenderry. Because what is there, the thing is virtually bursting the museum at its seams. But as Minister Cummins said this morning, in order to make sensible suggestions, the BTII will be expecting that as many sources as possible will submit their ideas, their plans, and their proposals. I'm happy to see that the BTII is willing to listen to other possibilities, because so there have to be some in-depth analysis of the project which we are planning for Glenderry. Mr. President, we have never housed a prisoner at Glenderry of the caliber of Nelson Mandela. No, not at all. Mandela was indeed, sir, an international figure. And there are people who are willing to wait in lines for hours a day in order to see the cell which housed that great man. But as we have heard, sir, we have housed one of the greatest escape artists the region has ever known. And like Senator Grant, too, I recall when the chief of prison at the time fortified a particular cell and said that if the escape artist was good enough to get hooked from there, he would have to be Houdini. I remember that very well. In fact, I can't forget it. And I'll tell you why I can't forget it. I have acted as Prime Minister in this country on one occasion and one occasion only. And it was when I was acting Prime Minister that Mr. Hall escaped the second time. I'll never forget it. So I mean, almost want to say it's because of me. But that's a fact. That is a fact. No, sir. As Senator Grant said, we have to tell our own story. We have to tell our own story. And as a Philippine, I cringe when I recall and when I realize what actually happened to Sam Lord's Castle. In fact, even as I speak now, I'm getting emotional. This was one of the bastions of our heritage. This Sam Lord's Castle. I mean, there were so many people in St. Philip worked at Sam Lord's Castle. This was one of the bastions of our heritage. But thankfully, sir, Sam Lord was immortalized in song by the Merry Men. And you can hum it, you know. He used to hang the lanterns in the coconut trees and lure those ships upon the reefs. And when the sailors thought they'd reached the town, alas, they run aground. You think, sir, that what happened to Sam Lord's Castle in Barbados could have happened to Sam Lord's Castle or a similar site anywhere else in the Caribbean? That would have been saved. That property, we have ourselves to blame, sir. We have ourselves to blame. He was a scoundrel. He was a scoundrel. And sir, he was not jailed in Barbados, if I remember correctly, but he was jailed in England. And we squandered the opportunity, sir, of keeping the many relics which were there at that castle. There's a maid who worked at Sam Lord's Castle who lived about 3 houses away from me. And she would tell me of the things she would have had to dust off every day. The swords that some soldiers carried coming off the ships, the helmets they were wearing. There was even a chest that Napoleon was sending to Josephine on one of the ships and so on. It hurts me as I could see those things because I visited there dozens and dozens of times. And all those things have gone to naught. I am saying so. There may be some in the museum for all I know. But sir, I believe that the Sam Lords chapter would have fitted perfectly, as one of the attractions of the prison. I do believe so, sir. Sir, I do not know what eventually will happen at Glenderry. I do believe, sir, that things like the gallows with the noose made of rope and so on, that could very well be preserved. The cat o' nine tails could be preserved. If you want, you can even preserve the section where the women were housed. They should be well kept, that area where the prisoners were buried. And like everyone else, sir, I recall the furniture which was made by the prisoners, and that can be displayed. All about through the government offices, we can see that furniture. In Parliament, we can see furniture built by the prisoners. In the courts of this country, we can see furniture built by the prisoners. And sir, I used to go to the exhibition as a boy, and I would walk and see the first prize and so on for furniture won by the prisoners. And I know, sir, that some ex-cons, when they left the prison, they came back and they continued to make furniture after their release. And we can have a section there to display the type of furniture that would have been built by the prisoners. So when I hear the talk about you are celebrating the punishment and so on, nonsense, utter nonsense, Mr. President. We can make use of that facility. So as I finish, sir, I listened and I heard Senator Cummins call for ideas from all those who want to have proposals and projects. Submit them, please. And we do not want a project which is only there for show. We want something that is economically viable as well. Something which will want people to want to go to Glenderry. I'm obliged to you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much, His Honor Senator Greenidge. Senator Moore.
Mr. President, I rise this afternoon to make a small contribution to the matter that's being debated and to show why it's important that we look at aspects of what has occurred here in terms of the vesting of this property into the hands of the BTII. Clearly, I think, like most people of my generation, we're well familiar with Glenderry Prison. Glenderry Prison, that site, is known certainly to most people in St. Michael, all over the country, really. And I've listened with some mixed feelings as to some of the comments made with regard to whether or not this site should be preserved or put to a constructive use. Now, we know the size of the property and the land, and certainly, like anything else in our history, all aspects of our history may not necessarily be what we want it to be. I don't think anyone is going to sit down and tout that a prison is something that we think is ever so wonderful, but it's a necessity of life. I don't think there's any country in the world where you don't have some type of penal institution, because it's a necessity of life. This particular location that was previously used and is now no longer being used for the original purpose certainly does reflect a part of our history. Now, if one were to think that everything that is negative in our past should be forgotten, should be buried, should be totally dismantled and discarded, then when one looks at slavery and one sees remnants of our past, I don't think that there are many people in Barbados that would believe that slavery was a wonderful thing. So then does it mean we should get rid of all the slave huts, burn down and destroy all the plantation, homes, houses, and anything at all that were remnants of our slave past? I don't think anyone would think that that's the correct way in how you deal with your history. History is there for a purpose. It is there for future generations to know what has transpired within their society. How do you have an identity and continue to form an identity of yourself if you do not have one knowing what has transpired within the environment in which you, your family, your ancestors have lived? It's not possible. So one has to take these things within the context and understand why this particular vesting of this site is a good thing, because not only does it preserve an aspect of our history which people need to know about, because, there are many people that see Mr. President, there are many people that feel that Barbados started in the 21st century. There's some who believe it started in the 20th century. And why do I have this belief, Mr. President? When one even looks at some of the things that we do, some of the things that we name after people, and some of the things that we do as a nation, it sometimes makes one think that those who make these decisions believe that Barbados started within the last 100 years. And that is not so. And what we cannot do is to try to discard or forget aspects of our history, or see no value in the preservation of knowledge for future generations. So I am in support of the vesting of this land. I know the Glenderry prison is the site is of a bygone era. And like everything else, modernization, technology, and science changes our country. Our country is being changed before our eyes as we sit here in this Senate. Here we have a pandemic that has overwhelmed many countries. It is pervasive throughout the entire world, and certainly here in Barbados. You only have to read, Mr. President, your newspaper, listen to the radio or watch television, or even go on social media, and you can see what is transpiring with this particular pandemic. So we talk about technology, we talk about the science, and our approach and management of what's happening to us today. What's that? They say we should wear a mask. That's why I have on one. That is what the science says. That is what we are telling Barbadians, Mr. President, every day. Wear your mask. We are telling them, wear your mask when you are in closed environments. When we are in places like this, air conditioned, with little ventilation, wear your mask. We tell them social distance. And that's why, as we are in here today, there's a distance between where we all sit. That was not so a year ago, was it, Mr. President? A year and a half ago, since the pandemic, it has become a necessity because of the changing world that we're in. Yes, we have our history, which we have talked about today, and we have what's happening to us today, which we have continued to learn from what transpired from the first time this virus would have been brought to our attention, Mr. President, in January of last year. And our approach to it and our solutions to it have continued to evolve based on what we are being told is the science. So we are all in here with masks. I am speaking with my mask on because the science says that you should continue to wear your mask, especially when you're speaking. It doesn't say remove your mask when you speak for a photo opportunity. It says keep your mask on. Why are we doing that? Because we care about other individuals, or should care about other individuals, Mr. President, and their protection. That is what we are telling the general public. Every day, you read the notices on social media, notices put out by the relevant authorities, Mr. President. It says social distance, wear your mask, especially in closed environments, and of course sanitize, etc. So one would hope that here in this chamber, Mr. President, that we would adhere to what we have been preaching to the general public. I don't know how well it is to hear someone speaking in a mask, but I'm sure this entire chamber, Mr. President, can understand and hear every word that I'm saying. We must not sit down and believe all of these, what I would like to say, are fake news. People say you can't wear masks for too many hours or for too long because it's going to have a deleterious effect on you. Well, if that's so, Mr. President, doctors could not be performing operations. Many operations take hours, but they can't whip off their mask in the middle of an operation, Mr. President, and then perhaps infect or hurt their patients. So, why are we here in this environment today? It is to debate this resolution. Now, technology may not have been used at Glenderry, because that was of a bygone era. Technology today is being used at Dodds, the new facility for prisoners here in this island. And I think people who know the two facilities would concur that there is a huge difference between what was previously had and what we have today. But technology too is important in our day-to-day existence in here. Why do I say that? Because the government has been using, private sector has been using, everyone has been using technology now because of the circumstances of COVID-19 in order to be able to transact the business of their companies or of any entity that has it available to them. When I say technology, Mr. President, I'm using it right now. I am talking through a microphone so everyone can hear me. People who have any broadband, data, or any type of social media can see me on YouTube and stuff. Just like how we have been able to see other parliaments worldwide by using technology. It wasn't as prevalent before COVID, Mr. President, but it has become even more used out of necessity. And why? Because we're trying to protect individuals. So when we go to places like the supermarket, we see it. You see the social distancing. They know that everyone's skills of reading may not be the same. So they ensure that they have nice markings on the ground so you know exactly where to stand. They ensure that you social distance. They make sure you wear your mask, sanitize your hands. You see it as well in the banks, insurance companies, government entities. We even have people, Mr. President, working from home. Why are they working from home? So that we're not bringing large groups of people together, especially with a deadly virus that has claimed the lives of many Barbadians and many people worldwide, and has also been, unfortunately, the reason for many people to have become quite ill and to have to spend some time away from their homes in a facility simply because they've contracted a virus. I see that I know there are some doctors in the Senate, and I won't speak about that aspect of what is this virus, only because they'll be better able to speak on that. But what we do know is that we try to keep people away from each other in other words, not make them congregate. Too many people coming together. So, Mr. President, I was quite, as much as I agree with this vesting of this property, I'm still not sure why we're all here in this environment today, and with people taking off their masks to speak. I'm not aware that that is the science. Perhaps it has changed. Who knows? Because things do change day to day. But what I do know is that technology is being used in order for people to be able to do their business virtually, in a virtual world. We see it all the time. We see it in other parliaments. As a matter of fact, Mr. President, the Parliament of Barbados uses the technology for elected members to be able to participate in the House, so that all of the elected members don't have to come together in the same room and space in order to conduct the business of the people. But not so, Mr. President, for the Senate. Not so. No amendment or adjustment has been made to allow us as people to be able to conduct our business unless we come here in person. We must be here in person, Mr. President, for this to happen. But not so. There are all kinds of theories, I don't know what they are. I have no idea. Some people are saying the reason why that senators must come in person and not elected members is because senators only make $1,400 a month. Oh, sorry, I'm being corrected, Mr. President. I apologize. $1,400.79 a month. Oh, $1,479.07 a month, Mr. President. There are chairmen of boards, Mr. President, that make more than that. But they're not being asked to come here in this particular environment. 21 people, Mr. President, 5 staff members and other people in order to conduct the business because, Mr. President, there's technology available that allows other aspects of the same parliament to be able to meet that are not afforded to the Senate. So I don't know if that's the reason, Mr. President. Some people theorize that it's to stop certain people from being in the Senate. So if you can't meet virtually, then they can't come and they cannot participate. I don't know if that's true. That's just a theory. That's just a theory, Mr. President. I cannot say. But what I can say is that in another place and another part of this parliament, they can do so. Some other people say the lives of senators are not as important because if something happens to a senator or you want to get rid of them, you just get rid of them and appoint someone else and put them in the chair. But not so for elected member, Mr. President, because for an elected member, you have to go to a by-election. So the process is not as simple. So therefore, perhaps that's That's why I don't know. Like I said, that's just another theory. Then there's another theory, and that is that you're trying to protect, that we are trying to protect certain people because of issues. Let's leave it there. Well, I don't know if that's true, but I think that all Barbadians should be protected. You know, we talk about Black Lives Matter. This life matters. That life matters. All lives matter. All Barbadian lives matter. Whether they are in the Senate, an elected member, a member of the public, whether they are, regardless of their ethnicity, regardless of their religion, regardless of their age, regardless of their gender, regardless of their socioeconomic condition, every Barbadian life matters. Everyone, and it should. And when we make decisions as legislators, we should always remember that all lives matter. So, Mr. President, I'm not sure why senators are being made to come, all of them in person, in this environment. 21, along with the staff that's here. You're quite able to see, Mr. President, people that are present and other people who may wish to join that are able to do so once they're adhering to the protocols. Now, I don't know. I don't know what is the reason. I cannot say. I cannot say why the science is only applied certain places. I cannot say why the technology is only applied in certain places. I can't say, and I do not know the reason, but I will proffer this, Mr. President. I think that once you have the ability to make an adjustment to change the conditions of an individual in order to protect them, but still allow them to do the business for which they have committed, that should be put in place. Not just for a select few, but for all. Now, I know there are people in here who know far better than me all about rights. I know far better than me all about things like conditions of service and all of that. So I won't tread there either, except to say, when we are speaking about individuals, we should always remember that all individuals should have similar rights. And we should always try our best to ensure that we provide an opportunity of fairness, transparency, and of course of elucidation for individuals to know why some individuals are afforded certain rights and courtesies and others are not. It would make things a lot more equitable. It would make people understand what is transparent, and it would not then appear, Mr. President, as if it's some sort of, I don't know, nonchalant, laissez-faire attitude towards an important aspect of what has to be done for the people of Barbados and the business of the people of Barbados. So, when we speak in here, Mr. President, and we're here to do this matter, this vesting, yes, I agree with it, but does it require all of us in here, in the midst of the spread of a variant of a deadly virus, is that the message that we're sending to Barbadians? What is the real purpose? Why? Why all these months can no provision be made for senators as has been made for other individuals who have to conduct the business of the people of Barbados, Mr. President, including government workers? Many of them are working from home. Why? We don't want all of them out sick. What happens, Mr. President, if one of us in here had the virus? Now, Mr. President, I know that there are people who are vaccinated, people who are not vaccinated, and what have you, and that's their choice. I personally believe, Mr. President, firmly believe in vaccination. And I want to say that in here, and I would encourage every and anyone that's not been vaccinated to do so. To do so. Because we know that there are more people who are infected with the virus who are not vaccinated than the ones that are vaccinated. So therefore, the vaccines are not foolproof, but they certainly offer a level of protection against serious illness in most cases. Because there's no absolute in life. But having said that, we still know there is a risk. Now, would you, if you heard gunfire run over the middle of the street, and I don't think so, so would you want to risk the health and safety and security of people where it is not necessary? Where it is not necessary. If the answer, Mr. President, is no, you would not risk the safety and security of people if it is not necessary, then I say again, this chamber, where we are sitting, and I'm talking about the room and not just the fact that it's the Senate chamber, Mr. President, is outfitted with technology already. So there's no additional cost to outfitting it with technology. None. So if there's no additional cost to outfitting it with technology, then why not allow and afford senators the same consideration that we are affording other Barbadians to protect themselves and their families, because they go home, don't they? Protect themselves and their families as much as is humanly possible. As much as is humanly possible. I already gave you some of the theories. I don't think I'll go over them again, because I think most people understood when I said what I said, that some people theorize is to keep people out. Some people theorize life doesn't matter, whatever. It doesn't make a difference if all of those theories are incorrect. What is important is that we have options. We have options, Mr. President, and we should always consider options where we know it is the right thing to do. When we know, Mr. President, that is the right thing to do. I don't think that most people will willy-nilly do things, most people, knowing that what they're doing has a negative, or can have, I should say, or can have, Mr. President, a negative effect on individuals. You know, the Golden Rule was proclaimed by Jesus and I won't bother, Mr. President, to go into a definition of that. Because I think most people in here, like most Barbadians, we grew up in a religious society. Many of us are Christian, because Barbados is predominantly a Christian society. Not to say, and I embrace all religions, but the Golden Rule was proclaimed by Jesus of Nazareth during his Sermon on the Mount. Was it not? I know Dr. Holder is here, and I know Dr. Holder, who I believe her doctorate is in theology, as well as we also have, and she's not in a seat, but we do have another individual of the cloth. Because this maxim is found in most religions and cultures, the Golden Rule. So I believe, Mr. President, that certainly if it is good enough for the church, good enough for religions, it's not just Christian religions, it surely must be good enough for us to think about when we go to make decisions about ourselves, about our fellow colleagues, and certainly about all the citizens of our country. So, Mr. President, having said that, I will wrap up by saying that everything in life may not always have been good on our society, but if it was a necessity and it has a value for future generations, then it needs to be preserved so that they can learn something from what has transpired before them. And that is how societies develop and grow, and that is how people are able to expand their knowledge and their ability to do better for themselves and their families and other generations that will come long after we are gone. And so with this very short presentation, and with these few words, Mr. President, I will now take my seat, and I'm obliged to you.
Thank you, Senator Moore. Senator Cummings.
Mr. President, I beg to move the suspension of the Honourable the Senate for 1 hour, so we reconvene at 20 minutes to 3.
The question is that this sitting be suspended until 2:40 p.m. Those honourable senators in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This sitting stands so suspended until 2:40 p.m. today.